Tradition and religion is a very difficult subject to breach, especially if the two matters are in the same room. What do you find the hardest challenge in trying to find these parallels and unite them through a documentary?
I think the biggest challenge for me was the pre-production. I think some people may notice that in the documentary, there's only one priest from the religion side, and there's like three other experts in Iban tradition. And it does feel a little bit imbalanced, but I did try as much as I could to reach out to the people in the religious side. And not a lot of people dare to speak about it. People have opinions about this, especially the Ibans, but nobody is daring to say anything. And not just on the religious side. Even on the Iban tradition side, I called many parties that are not going to mention, but they are supposed to be the ones who know about these things. But none of them really wanted to speak out. So I just have to resort to these people that happen to be my family. And they do know about this, they trust me, and they are willing to speak up.
You mentioned that some of the artists were not willing to speak up. Do you have any inkling as to why maybe? Do they maybe champion more of a contemporary voice?
I feel like because the topic is between religion and tradition, like you said, such a sensitive subject, no one is willing to seem like they're one side or the other. Yeah, it's hard to convince them to say something. And even when I did convince some of them to say something, they kind of went a bit too far, too speculative, too negative. That's why the topic is tradition and religion. It started out as tradition versus religion. But as I delve into the documentary, and with any documentary work, you find out things are not as expected. And if you are a true documentarian, you follow that story. And what I found was it's tradition and religion. They all have the same goal of preserving the music. They have different ways of going about it. And like I said many times to my friends and colleagues, it's not one or the other. Both can happen. They can preserve it how they want it and work together still. It doesn't have to be one or the other way to preserve this Gendang Rayah.
Do you feel that you will ever publish this cut out response?
I'm okay with sharing what I read on it, what I saw, but to actually show the material that was given to me, probably not.
On the subject of anger and reactivity, I believe one of the statements in the documentary mentioned that if you do not practice this, you are not Iban. What is your take on that as someone who straddles the line between race and religion, and also knowing your roots and also having contemporary creative practices today?
I feel like that's his definition of Iban. So if you feel like you are Iban and you are contributing to the Iban life, Iban traditions, and keeping it alive, then you are as Iban as you are. You just are. Some people, when you go too traditional or trying to keep it 100% only of this kind, when you're preserving it, you only you filter out any innovation, you filter out any modification to it to make it suitable to current situation. It kind of actually makes it harder to preserve, and it actually makes it harder to be popular again. I think the best example is sapek. Sapek is a Kenyah musical instrument, string instrument. Originally, it was a pentatonic scale instrument. It only has like 4 strings, 3 strings, but they were able to adapt to modern scales like diatonic scale, the major minor scales that you always hear, and put more frets, more strings, and then make it electronic sapek, and it became popular because now it's a lot more accessible, it's a lot more relatable. You can play popular songs on it, and that's why sapek is popular. I believe most people in Georgetown, even everywhere in Malaysia, recognize sapek because they are willing to adapt to the modern situation.
Gatekeeping in any culture is very dangerous
Yep.
to the continuity of the culture itself.
It can backfire. Yeah.
Yeah. And I believe tradition, at some point in time, the tradition that we know today was then introduced as a new practice, right? Do you have any opinion on where is the line on what can and cannot be updated?
Like in the documentary said, these things, they will die a natural death. As they get less and less relevant to our daily lives, it just dies. But keeping them, now that we have the technology to keep these things recorded and archived, that's the least we can do lah. I mean, if we cannot even archive these things, then for me, that's the definition of it being dead, this tradition. So even though we don't practice it, we don't believe in it, at least we have some record of it ever happening. Make it a part of history, if not tradition. So I think that's the least of it lah. I think that's the line. Yeah. Definitely, archival work is important because that's history at its purest. At least it's not of an opinion or something, and it's just there for everyone to see and make their own opinions. We should preserve these things so that at least we know that it existed, and if somebody in the future or around the world is looking for it, it's there. And for us, we take it for granted because we live it. So we don't feel like it's important, we just feel like it's everyday life. But you have to see it in the context of future generations and other people. They don't see it every day. So as monotonous or as boring as it may seem to us, it's important to have it in archive.
On the subject of the chicken, does it have to be a chicken? What happens if you don't use a chicken?
Yeah, like in the commentary said, it has to be a chicken, and it has to be a chicken of a specific type. If you try to use any other animals, well, like they said, I cannot confirm, it might be a coincidence because I've never seen it personally, but things will happen, bad things. Not necessarily somebody just fainting, but it could be like, the food is not good or something. But I don't know, I'm not sure, but that's what they say. And it has to be a specific type of chicken. Like in my longhouse, it has to be the red one with the red feathers and all that. If you try any other color, like a white chicken and all that, it doesn't work. It still have the same bad consequences. Yeah. So it's very specific, including the type of chicken. Yeah.
Cool. Do you have any message to the filmmakers out there who are also doing cultural preservation efforts, for example?
Yeah. Cultural preservation efforts through filmmaking, two things for me. One, you try to keep it as original as possible because you are also part of archival work. But at the same time, there needs to be a story that is actually engaging, that people, with one question you can ask them, or with one sentence you can give them, it would pique their interest. Because we have to adjust to the society that we have now. As much as we want it to be interesting to other people, but people do not have the same interests. So as a filmmaker, it's your job as an artist to find ways, to find spots in the stories where you can turn it into something that is interesting for most people. Because the point, I feel, part of the preservation is to make it engaging and relatable to more people.
When you do this research, when you go into the communities that you are researching, do you find there's a level of importance with regards to hiring also members of that community to find a way to give back through your filmmaking activities besides the archival aspect of things? Are there also job opportunities for the members of the culture that you research? And is that something that you would advise?
Yes, I feel even with the musicians that I included in who actually played the Gendang Rayah, yeah, I hired them. We part of the funding went to them, and they were very happy about it, because yeah, they just didn't expect it. They are just motivated to keep the thing alive, and they're just happy that somebody is even interested in it. And but even if they don't ask, I feel like as filmmakers and as someone who, not just filmmakers, someone who tries to preserve these things, money can be a big help in making sure these things are preserved. I mean, we as artists and filmmakers and video makers and anybody in the crew making art, we always complain how people do not pay us enough. Now that it's our chance to help them, why don't we?
Do you feel if outsiders are coming in to, let's say they want to help, they actually want to help, they have received funding from somewhere to help an indigenous or a native culture, do you feel that they should maybe partner up with locals more, to get more of a feeling of context?
Yeah, context. I feel like outsiders, they can, in certain ways, be more objective of what the culture is, and comparing it to their perspective. And as a professional, which I hope they are experts, they can be more objective of what it is. But with that, context is important. So even though it may seem very weird to their perspective, the outsider perspective, it is the most natural thing it can be for our perspective. So definitely we have to work together. It cannot just be an outsider coming in, seeing, and then just living with just their own opinion. Hello, sorry everyone. Just want to end the Q&A with saying that thank you for watching. And if you have any more questions that is not within the Q&A, please you can DM us in Surah Creative if you have any question about Rayah. We are glad to answer it. My intention is just so that everyone is talking about Rayah. That's it. So if you want to ask more, please do ask, and I'll answer them and I'll DM them to you. Okay? So sorry, I have to re-record because the one that I recorded at HAUS, the audio kind of. So thank you everyone. Bye.